everyone. Thanks for tuning in to our author interviews on Safe Haven Publishing's YouTube channel. I am here today with Jillian Witt, who is the author of the Compass Points series. You can see these books, they're beautiful. And we're going to kind of talk today about her and her books and just kind of really dive in. So to start, Jill, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to everyone?
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I am a romantic fantasy author. That trilogy that Erin just showed, that's my debut trilogy that's came out. I guess I started in November of 23, and completed the trilogy late last year. And so I'm really excited to have that complete trilogy out in the world and working on new and exciting stories.
I'm excited for new exciting stories. Can you share with us? So, for you, in your writing process, what does like a typical day look like for you?
It's really interesting. I've always been a bit of a morning person, but I've become even more of a morning person now. So I end up I find my best writing is like first thing in the morning. So I wake up early and I sit, especially if I'm in a drafting sort of phase, I sit in a cozy chair in the in my living room because I don't feel like sitting at my desk for whatever reason is good for creating the world. It's great for editing the world, but not like net new creation. And then so I do that for a couple hours and then I do have a 9 to 5 job, so I have to I break for that. And then come back and sometimes like if I'm drafting, I'll usually only get to draft in the mornings. And then if I'm editing, I generally have some like extra steam where I can come back at the end of the day.
Mhm. How do you, with having a 9 to 5, how do you kind of balance like writing with all your other responsibilities and that?
It is I mean it's hard, but I mean, it's like anyone balances any things that they have in life, whether it's like work, family, kids, like work, writing, like hobbies, like it's, just making the time where I can. And, I really enjoy it. So it's an easy thing to like find time to do. I feel like that's the true marker is that it's like something that I really enjoy doing with my free time. And so it doesn't feel like a chore when it's like writing time.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you share the inspiration behind either the Compass Point series or your latest book or kind of how you came up or what sparked the initial idea?
I'll do it for compass points because it's one of my favorite things. I probably talk about it too much, but I just like the world of compass points is inspired by US national parks, which is an odd thing to say for a fantasy world. Like it is second world fantasy. It's completely like there's no part of the United States in there. But I found that like when you're creating a second, like a world completely different than your own, that it's good to have like some concepts that are familiar. And so for me, that ended up being the scenery. And so the natural scenery was really heavily inspired by hiking that my partner and I had done a lot of when we lived in California. And I will say that like the initial inspiration for Compass Points came when we were at Crater Lake in Oregon. And it, like, if anyone's familiar, like Crater Lake, the giant crater and in the middle of it, like it looks like a volcano that like popped its top, but instead of like lava in there, there's a beautiful lake. It's just perfectly blue, and just amazing. And so in that lake, there's an island, and I think it's even called Witches or Wizards Island because it looks like a little witch's hat, like it has the little like triangle tilt. And I looked down at it from like the edge, and I was just like, there is definitely like a some reclusive magical being that lives on that island. Like you can't convince me otherwise. And that's literally how Compass Point starts. So that that
That's
was where I started.
that's amazing. So what do you um sorry, I'm just like I'm looking at my questions and trying to figure out where I want to go. Um how do you like approach character development when you are writing?
Feel like every character is a little bit different. Still, like sometimes they teach themselves to me. Sometimes I'm wrangling them. I really think that it like for me, the character's shape tends to start with like their um what is that? Like their function in society, if you will, like what they do, like their job almost,
Mhm.
but it's, you don't generally think about it set in like a fantasy world, and like why it matters. Because I just really like, I think that's something that's consistent in my writing is like a really like are pretty competent FMCs. And
Mhm.
so like I really like to think about like where they are in life before like this magical world explodes around them for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And then it's sort of so that's been my, I think, general approach to the FMC. And it's I find that the other characters, like any like the MMC or like other surrounding casts are like even more challenging because like I either write first person or like third person with the narrow view usually of the FMC. And so it's like everything is still like, perceived through her lens. And so it just like it's always like I think that's like such an interesting part of character development because you kind of you have to develop the character
Mhm.
outside of her view, right? But then it's like but then you have to put that into practice of like what they're doing through her view. And so it's like I find those a little bit more challenging because they're like, multi steps for writing a single sentence kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this person thinks this, but like she sees this and is thinking that this means this. And it's like, the layers and the way that that character evolves, I think is just harder because it's not like them telling it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you find like with character development, and you mentioned that the kind of the inspiration of the national parks for the Compass Point series, do you mention or do you find yourself doing a lot of research in when you're starting to set up a fantasy book world or storyline?
I feel like so far my research has been about like some of the random things that go into fantasy worlds or that like the job of the FMC. So I remember distinctly like doing quite a bit of like I don't know, like Googling and math to try and figure out how far a horse could travel in like how many days, like how much terrain could they cover, especially if it's mountainous and then like what does that back into for how many miles across that means and how like so that kind of nonsense takes up a bit of time. And then there's more like I have in another book that I'm working on, I have a FMC who's a jeweler. And so like I don't know, I spend a lot of time on YouTube watching like gem cutting and like shining like, videos to try and figure out how that whole process would work, especially like without like electricity. So that
Hey,
was an interesting turn of events,
the things
time
you
that I
don't even
didn't know I was going to spend.
yeah, yeah. Like, how would this work? Do I need to make magic electricity? Um, that's awesome. So, what themes do you find yourself returning to kind of as a writer?
I feel like I have a couple. Um, One that is like really prevalent, I think, throughout each of the books and compass points is that concept of like not having to do everything yourself.
Mhm.
And it's one that I really identify with, and it's one that I think like a lot of it's fairly relatable sometimes. And I think that like a big part of that is it's it's also kind of like a little bit of a joke at the genre because we all the time have the concept in fantasy of like the chosen one, right? Like and they have to like they get to a certain point, usually with a cast of characters, and then all of a sudden like they have to go it alone, right? And it's like, well, like, do you though? Like, and like I would actually say that in that case, a lot of times they actually end up needing the people around them for whatever it is. Like maybe they have their moment, but they still need everyone for X, Y, and Z. And so I just really lean into that too because like I think that important to remind ourselves, and like especially like whether it's like something like ruling the continent like the Fae do in Compass Points, or like just the way that you exist and like have your carry on your responsibilities in life. Like it's gonna be really hard if you just try and do everything yourself. And the more that you can like find partners and friends to rely on, like I think that that really eases the burden.
Yeah, that whole it takes a village type
Yeah,
adage. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for
I'm
sure.
a huge found family fan. Most of the books that I read have some element of found family because it makes sense. It's logical. You don't want to be alone. So, what challenges did you face while you were writing Compass Points?
I probably faced every challenge you can hit in, astrology. Like first it was just writing a first book. That was pretty hard. Then it was writing like a second book, middle of the trilogy. That was like a journey unto itself. I rewrote that book at least 3 times, no joke. Like I yeah, and finally I think that the conclusion of the trilogy ended up being a little bit easier once I had like a firm grasp on the first two. But like the first two were really hard. One was just like convincing myself that like I could write a book, right? Like
Hmm.
never done that before.
Hmm.
Um, so that had a lot of like I just don't think that it's always clear as like when you think about writing and think about like the story that you want to tell, how much how much goes into like thinking about like all of the characters, especially when you think about like a romantasy that you have like, a main character and a love interest and like oh, like that's easy. There's two people there. But like no romantasy only has two people, right? Like that's just not the way that they work. And so really expanding that world and like it quickly gets, I mean, I think that it spirals pretty quickly, right? Like so I did try and keep it just to like just to work myself sort of through the process, like slightly narrow in the first book where I had like essentially I would say 3 main characters, and then a couple that had uh cameos, if you will, and were going to be more important later. But then as soon as you get into the second book, you have like, I mean, 5 like main characters almost 6. And then like an ensemble cast of like, 7 or 8. And
Hmm.
so that like, I don't know, it's just like it's a shock to the senses of like how many more people you're now balancing on the page in each scene, and like what their purpose is there, right? Like they can't just be hanging out. They need a reason to be on page.
Yeah, yeah. Are you more of a plotter when you write, or is it more of like a fly by the seater?
I'm like, I think the only way to describe it is some weird hybrid because I generally put together what I would like the loosest sense of the word, a chapter level plan, where I like at least say where, like, it's less than a sentence. It's not even a sentence about each chapter of like what ideally would go on there, but like I also tend to like explore a lot in my first draft and before like anyone else sees it. And so I would say that I rewrite from like my first draft to my second draft
Hmm.
almost 90% of my words. So like, and that's like like once I kind of realize where everyone is going, like I try and just keep going to get to the end because like if you like I don't know if I'm like revising as I go, then I'll never like I just don't know how I would ever get to the end. Whereas I'm like I can always go through it again. We can always read it again, and edit it again. So yeah, that's the approach that I take. It's worked so far. I'm sure that it will continue to evolve as I evolve as a writer.
What made you want to start writing? Like what kind of drove that inspiration?
I mean, I think this is common for a lot of writers, but I'm just a huge reader. Like, I mean, I guess as evidenced as like everything behind me.
Yeah.
So like I'm a reader first, and I just like thought that especially with the sort of explosion of indie publishing, that it was really cool to see that like you didn't like have to follow like a more traditional process to get your stuff out there and to find like start to find readers.
Hmm.
And so I was like, well, this is like, I don't know, I really feel like I have a lot of stories I'd like to try and tell. And then I've started to, I mean, it's obviously a ton of work, but started to find readers that kind of are eager, for the next thing that I'm doing, which is really cool. And I think that's just like really motivational as a writer.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So I see a lot of fantasy books on your shelves behind you, some of which I also have. Oh, there goes my dog. Hold on one second. Gonna have to edit that out, Deb. Sorry. Sorry. Let me try again. I see there's a lot of fantasy books on your shelves behind you.
Okay.
Hang on. I thought they were going to be behaved throughout this whole thing, but then they heard something that did that. All right, let me try this question one more time. I see there's a lot of fantasy books on your shelves behind you, some of which I also have. But I was curious, are there other genres besides fantasy that you enjoy reading as a reader?
Yeah, I do. I think my interests are kind of all over the place. I definitely am like at this point predominantly fantasy, but I've like read a ton of classics and I love a good cozy mystery. And I like yeah, any kind of murder mystery is fun for me. Um, I think those are the other big ones probably.
Was there like a specific book that you read that like really kind of influenced you, like or really made an impact on you?
I'm sure that this is a common answer, but I have
That's
uh,
okay.
like I just had like a summer, I think it was between like high school and college, like was my like summer of Jane Austen where I like read literally everything that she had written.
hmm
And I was just like, oh, I thought it was amazing. Like I don't know, I was
hmm
like every story was compelling, like really different characters, but obviously like very similar setting. And I just yeah, like that was one of the things where it, like kind of thought about like storytelling, right? Like this one author had written all of these different women and like they each had like very unique stories, but there were some themes that were pretty universal.
Yeah.
Um and I just like I ended up taking a lot of English classes in college too. So I like explored a lot more of like I'd say like Victorian or
hmm
I feel like I did a lot of English lit. But it was just all so, like super interesting to see like what authors can do in their storytelling, like with how they show us like the characters' motivations or like the word choice for like certain actions, like how that impacts like your emotions while you're reading. Like I just started to get into a lot of the mechanics, I guess.
hmm That's awesome. And I think that makes a lot of sense too with Jane Austen, right? Because you mentioned before how much you enjoy writing strong FMCs, and I think she writes quintessentially strong women in all of her books. So that's that. Whether or not it is a common answer, I think just shows how like universally successful Jane Austen has been as an author. Um, Speaking of authors, is there any? We'll ask some fun questions now. Are there any authors that you would consider collaborating with, like to write? They can be
I
ours or no longer with us.
Um, I would love to. I also though am like really curious how that works. Like I honestly like I don't get it. Like but I would love it because like I do spend a lot of time just like talking to myself. I talk to my dog instead, right? So that it doesn't sound like I'm talking to myself, but it's like I don't know, like I have to assume that it's so cool to have someone that you are creating with.
Yeah.
Um, like I've started to make more author friends where I'm like desperately begging them to like read my early drafts so that I can talk about it with someone, right? As
Mhm.
it's still like in the making its way to like
Yeah.
ready for the public. Um, but so yeah, I don't know. I would be probably intimidated by most of the people I would pick. Like probably be pretty cool to write with Jane Austen. I don't know, like,
Maybe. I
but I would
don't
probably spend a while hyperventilating before we got any work done.
I'd have trouble writing in her prose. I'm not sure I could do that.
Fair, fair. Yeah,
But maybe you could do like past writing and current writing, like flip between timelines.
yeah, that's it exactly. There you go.
Awesome. That's great. So, what is kind of, oh, here's another fun question I like to ask everyone. So, out of all of the characters you've written, if there was one character that you could spend the day with, who would it be? I have my choice for the books of yours that I've read, but I'm very curious what yours is.
I feel like I know your answer.
You probably do.
Probably a common one. And that's like I'll say that's like my first or second. Like so I probably have some close tie. I also like I think that Juliet would be really cool to
Oh,
spend time with. Because I just think that she is like the emblem of like her time period and leading one of the Fae courts. Like she was the only female there. She was the like probably most overly burdened out of everyone, just given like the history of the continent. And like she still like, just owned everything with like a poise that I and power that I would really like to understand.
mhm.
And so I think that she would be one that I would want to hang out with from like a teach me your ways. Like she
Mhm.
would definitely be like my Yoda.
Mhm.
But then I would also just hang out with Ari because he's kind of like, I
Amazing.
don't know,
He's amazing.
just fun to be around.
Yes, yeah. That's definitely who I would want to spend the day with for sure. Um, all right. So, kind of coming towards the end of our questions, what is next for you as an author? Where are you going and what are you excited about?
I'm super excited about, I have two projects that I'm sort of working on kind of at the same time at the moment. I mean, I'm in different parts with each of them. This has been an interesting test. Um, because I found when I was writing Compass Points that, especially because it was a trilogy, right? Like I couldn't start work on the second one until the first one was like kind of done and dusted because like I was probably going to change something here and it would impact something directly here. So what I did this time was that I have two different work streams going. And so one of them that I just started to announce last week has to do like it actually is in the world of compass points, but it's totally separate
Yeah.
from that like that set of characters. And so Compass Points is an interesting series because it's like this blend of cozy and epic. So
Mhm.
like it does have like higher stakes, like they're saving the continent and they are like leaders of fake courts, but they're just like really just cozy vibes. Like I don't know. I like
Mhm.
even though there are high stakes, I feel like that nothing too bad is going to happen to anyone. And like they have like again a lot of like found family vibes and um like cozier moments. But I decided to like I really wanted to lean into cozy. So I did more of like I'm starting a series that's a little bit more of like slice of life in one of the cities in the Compass Points world. So there's a city called Sandrin. And after the events of Compass Points, like a lot changes in I'd say like day-to-day
Yeah.
landscape for people with magic. Um, and so it sort of explores what like it's going to be four different books probably. And each one would be a different like half fae person that like is trying to find their way in the city of Sandrin and like what that looks like. And so and they're cozy romanticities because they're still like have some semblance of the elemental magic and it's the same world. So I really am
And
excited
they
for those. The first one.
standalones, so they're like
Yes.
interconnected standalones. Oh, that's nice. So you get the whole like arc of.
Yeah. I really wanted to try interconnected standalones because I think like I really love reading them.
Mhm.
And they're just like nice little like escapes from our big fantasy worlds and like
Mhm.
long journeys that we go on. And And that's just kind of what I was feeling at the moment, like I just want
Yeah.
tiny little joyous escapes that are going to bring me happiness and probably not a lot of heartbreak.
Yeah.
Um, so I am super excited about that. And then my other series that I'm starting is totally different world and a little bit darker. And it's like a book that's probably what's the best? My best comps are probably like One Dark Window and From Blood and Ash.
Nice. Fun.
So I'm excited about that one too.
That's awesome. Both of them sound amazing. Yeah, anything else you want to share? Any new things to be on the lookout for? Any places you're going to be soon?
I do have a couple. This will be my first year of doing like in-person events. So I do have a couple. But I think the first one is the Midwest Bookish Fest in June in Minneapolis.
Oh,
So
nice.
if anyone's there, definitely check it out. It looks like it's the first year for that event, but it looks like it's going to be amazing. And I would love to see anyone.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. I can't recommend the Compass Point series enough. It's one of my favorites. I absolutely adored it. So I really appreciate you taking the time to delve in a little bit and explain kind of where it came from and how it came about. So
Thanks, Erin.
yeah, have a great day.
Thanks, you too.